Endorsement. A form of public support or approval. Endorsement of a product. Endorsement of a brand. Endorsement of a company. Endorsement of a movie. Many retired athletes are able to make a lot of money by doing product endorsements. Acknowledge. To admit to be real or true. Acknowledge the existence. Acknowledge the importance. Acknowledge the need. Acknowledge the risk. We have to acknowledge that something is wrong with the new system. Diversification. Include more different types of things. Social diversification. Cultural diversification. Geographic diversification. Economic diversification. The study suggested diversification and rotation boost the production of crops. Subsidiary. Owned or controlled by another company. A subsidiary company. A subsidiary corporation. A subsidiary conglomerate. A subsidiary bank. The subsidiary companies will now have more autonomy than ever before. Adolescence. The time between childhood and adulthood. During adolescence. Before adolescence. Reach adolescence. Approach adolescence. Adolescence brings about major changes in a young person's body. Ancestry. The lineage of an individual. Maternal ancestry. Paternal ancestry. Jewish ancestry. Muslim ancestry. My best friend has both German and French ancestry in her blood. Prolong. To make something last a longer time. Prolong suffering. Prolong agony. Prolong conflict. Prolong recession. The teacher decided to prolong the test, giving 10 minutes extra to finish the exam. Metaphorical. Something that is used symbolically. Metaphorical language. Metaphorical meaning. Metaphorical narrative. Metaphorical approach. Their argument on health issues has a metaphorical as well as a literal meaning. Demographic. The statistical study of populations. A demographic change. A demographic shift. A demographic trend. A demographic transition. Fieldwork research requires knowing more about the demographic of the community. Patent. A government authority or license. A drug patent. An invention patent. A product patent. A software patent. If you don't patent your invention, other people may make all the profit out of it. Archive. A collection of older things. An archive of photographs. An archive of documents. A digital archive. An online archive. This vast archive has been indexed and made accessible to all types of researchers. Breeding. The mating and production of offspring. Breeding ground. Breeding patterns. Breeding practices. Breeding program. The breeding of horses and sheep is of equal importance with agriculture. Heritage. Important parts of society's history and culture. A cultural heritage. An ancient heritage. A rich heritage. A musical heritage. It is our core responsibility to protect the World Heritage Sites. Evoke. To bring a feeling, memory. Evoke memories. Evoke emotions. Evoke feelings. Evoke empathy. Racial discrimination is likely to evoke a strong response in the viewer. Proximity. The state of being near space or time. Close proximity. Geographical proximity. Physical proximity. Intimate proximity. The best thing about the location of the university is its proximity to the city center. In-depth. In a serious and detailed way. In-depth information. In-depth interview. In-depth investigation. In-depth research. Experts produce in-depth reports highlighting problems and offering solutions. Scenario. A description of possible actions. A typical scenario. An unlikely scenario. A worst-case scenario. A best-case scenario. In the worst-case scenario, more than 1 million people might be affected. Depression. Feel persistently sad for weeks or months. Acute depressions. Symptoms of depression. Diagnosis of depression. History of depression. The symptoms of depression can include poor appetite and weight loss. Dwindling. Gradually diminishing in size, amount, or strength. Dwindling supply. Dwindling resources. Dwindling economy. Dwindling population. We have been experiencing a dwindling number of animals and plants in the environment. Rigid. Not able to be changed, or unyielding. A rigid structure. A rigid hierarchy. A rigid schedule. A rigid timetable. The Japanese have a rigid code of etiquette, which may seem fake to foreigners. Biographical. Dealing with a particular person's life. A biographical documentary. A biographical book. Biographical details. Biographical notes. There was a biographical note about the author on the back of the novel. Pervasive. Spreading widely throughout an area. Pervasive influence. Pervasive smell. Pervasive corruption. Pervasive disorder. They put the most emphasis on the pervasive corruption of high officials. Consumer. Propensity to consume and keep consuming. Consumer behavior. Consumer goods. Consumer privacy. Consumer protection. A survey has been conducted on consumer attitudes toward organic food. Evidence. To prove something is true or not true. Eyewitness evidence. Compelling evidence. Conflicting evidence. Forensic evidence. They haven't produced any credible evidence to support the claims. Factor. The things that affect an event, decision. Contributing factor. Motivating factor. Behavioral factor. Mitigating factor. There were several factors contributing to the recent decline of honeybees. Census. A periodic count of the population. Conduct a census. Carry out a census. A population census. A nationwide census. The increasing racial diversity of the U.S. is reflected in the latest census statistics. DNA. Cells that contain the genetic information. DNA testing. DNA fingerprinting. DNA profiling. DNA matching. In our DNA we all carry a genetic template for the next generation. Initiative. An introductory act or step. Government initiative. Research initiatives. Practical initiative. Diplomatic initiative. The research initiative is being undertaken by a group of environmentalists. Commission. Authorize the production of something. Commission a study. Commission a report. Commission a survey. Commission a research. The newspaper commissioned articles on the dark side of the fashion industry. Privacy. The state of being free from public attention. Privacy abuses. Privacy concerns. Privacy violation. Invasion of privacy. Celebrities usually accuse the press photographers of violating their privacy. Satellite. A machine that has been sent into space. Satellite data. Satellite intelligence. Satellite trajectory. Weather satellite. Similar results are believed obtainable using communication satellites. Safety. State of being safe from danger or harm. Safety awareness. Safety concerns. Safety features. Safety practices. Their actions manifested a complete disregard for children's safety. Incentive. Something that encourages people to work. A financial incentive. An additional incentive. A cash incentive. An extra incentive. Workers need to be given the incentive to improve their performance. Curriculum. Courses offered by an educational institution. A school curriculum. National curriculum. A core curriculum. A broad curriculum. All the schools have art and music as part of the curriculum. Verbal. Spoken rather than written. A verbal abuse. A verbal support. A verbal attack. A verbal assurance. It is required that the job applicant must have good verbal skills. Transitional. In the process of change. A transitional period. A transitional phase. A transitional government. A transitional administration. Current healthcare facilities will continue for a transitional period. Consecutive. Following each other continuously. Consecutive days. Consecutive nights. Consecutive months. Consecutive years. After 5 consecutive defeats, the football team was almost ready to give up. Contamination. Making something dirty or poisonous. Bacterial contamination. Chemical contamination. Radioactive contamination. Food contamination. The disease is spread by the contamination of food and water by feces. Prominent. Important and well-known. A prominent role. A prominent figure. A prominent feature. A prominent celebrity. The government should be playing a more prominent role in promoting human rights. Inference. Process of reaching a conclusion. A reasonable inference. A logical inference. Draw an inference. Make an inference. The teacher asked the students to draw an inference based on the clues. Unethical. Morally bad, not ethical. Unethical practices. Unethical activity. Unethical conduct. Unethical behavior. The unethical behavior of the energy companies is posing threat to the environment. Copyright. Legal right of the owner or intellectual property. Infringe a copyright. Violate a copyright. Breach a copyright. Protect a copyright. Copyright protects the owner's work from being commercially exploited by someone else. Traditional. Relating to or based on old things. Traditional belief. Traditional marriage. Traditional practice. Traditional roles. Weaving and knitting are traditional cottage industries in many societies. Friendly. Acting like a friend, kind and helpful. Climate friendly. Consumer friendly. Environment friendly. User friendly. Friendly contacts between countries facilitate cultural and economic interchange. Obesity. Excessive accumulation of body fat. The obesity epidemic. The obesity rate. Childhood obesity. Adult obesity. There is evidence of a link between obesity and some forms of cancer. Distinct. A difference or contrast between similar things. A distinct class. A distinct category. A distinct type. A distinct entity. Her distinct work experience makes her the best candidate for the job. Credibility. The quality of being convincing or believable. Lose credibility. Gain credibility. Maintain credibility. Increase credibility. After the recent scandal, The government has lost all credibility.